This is Luke Grand from Practical Farmers of Iowa. We're so glad you're here. If you can hear me, do say so in the chat box. Just let me know that I'm being heard. We're going to switch over to the slides and get right into it tonight. We are here because 42% of Iowa farmers are going to be retiring in the next few years, according to an Iowa Rural Life poll. This is a big deal because it's going to be a lot of land that's going to turn over in management, and we want to make sure that beginners are ready to go wherever they're at and are always striving to improve their farms. We want to help ensure the success of that next generation. And we can do that in many different ways, we feel, and one of them is through these online seminars. So we're so glad to have you as a part of them tonight. We're in our February 7th Farminar on how to improve your farmers market sales. I know many folks out there are very interested in this topic, and we're glad to have so many of you here tonight. Wanted to make one note that we'll be skipping a week next week. Please enjoy Valentine's Day and take a break, and I wanted to make sure that no one will be joining us on the 14th, but do come again on the 21st of February when we'll be talking about adding small grains to large grain row crop farms. And then also every week through March 13th, we'll have our Winter Farminar series. This is made possible because of wonderful financial support from the Federal Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, which is a part of a USDA grant, a 3-year grant that we're now in our 2nd year. So we do pay our farmers for their knowledge, and we definitely want to continue to do that. So we are very thankful for the supporters we get to be able to do that. We have a great history with Farminars now, 3 years, 48. This is our 48th Farminar, and we've always focused on planning and marketing, very important to any farm enterprise. And we want to just make sure everybody is aware of those archive Farminars that are available at practicalfarmers.org/Farminar. You can watch all recorded Farminars, 47 of them, from anytime, anywhere, at any internet connection. So please do use that as a resource. The way these work is I do a quick 2 or 3 minute intro, and then we have introductions from our speakers, and they'll have a discussion that they've prepared, and we want to add your questions in to have a great vibrant discussion, and we will conclude at 8:30 p.m. That's how it works. We, as an organization, Practical Farmers of Iowa, are open and supportive, and we're a diverse organization that has many strengths, being that we have folks in all different enterprises across the state and now even growing around the Midwest. 10% of our members do not live in Iowa, so we are definitely a valuable resource for you to add to your advisory team. We want to make sure that you can succeed as well. How do you succeed? Well, you use our network. We have a great network prepared for you. We bring them to you in these online seminars and through our quarterly newsletter. And really the membership in Practical Farmers of Iowa might be priceless. When folks are looking at making buying decisions, you can save thousands of dollars getting the right information, the right ideas shared. So we want to encourage all those folks out there to join Practical Farmers of Iowa. We have an online join link right there on your screen. Just click that and it goes right to our Join PFI webpage. Just $35 a year for individuals, $45 a year for the entire farm, and that comes with many valuable discounts to our annual conference and more. We at PFI find ourselves with a wonderful audience of members who care a lot about these issues and care a lot about sharing their ideas. Freely, they give their ideas and information at our networking events, including this online seminar. We're all about trying to strategize together so we can all be successful. And we do have a really strong love of PFI with our PFI members. A great resource to add to your advisory team with many wonderful ideas, including those of Fred Kirschman, well-renowned sustainable agriculture farmer and advocate. We relish fresh ideas, and there's no ideas fresher than the ones that will be shared tonight from John Wesselius and Drew Montri. Let's begin with John and Drew. I'll load up their PowerPoint. And Drew, if you turn on your mic, we'll bring you in from Michigan. Oh, I forgot to mention that John and I are here together from Ames, Iowa. And so that's where we are presenting from. All right, John, do you want to begin, or do you want to have Drew start us off?
I can start.
Oh, hang on one second. Actually, Drew, I hear an echo, and I'm wondering if you can move your speakers away from your microphone or put in headphones.
Did that fix it?
Let's see here. Can I hear myself anymore? Barely, yeah. If it's bothering anybody else, let us know, but we'll go ahead with that. Yep, she's on now. So. Yep.
This is John, and just about myself, I live in northwest Iowa near Sioux Center. We have a 6-acre acreage on which we produce about 2 acres worth of vegetables. We raise some broilers on grass outdoors, and we raise a few pigs. We sell our products at the Sioux Center Farmers Market, which is a small town farmers market. Sioux Center's got about 6,000 people, and then in Sioux City and in Sioux Falls. We've been doing this since 2004, first in Sioux Center, then Sioux Falls, and then Sioux City, and we also operate a small CSA.
If you hold on one sec, I'm going to switch mics, and that'll help with the echo.
Sounds good.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
Great. This is Drew Montri. My husband and Adam and I own 10 Hens Farm. We're located in Bath, Michigan, which is just north of East Lansing, about 10 miles north of Michigan State's campus. We own 2 acres and we farm 2 acres, 1 acre that we own and 1 acre that we rent from a neighbor. We grow about 25 different crops year-round using high tunnels. So we have one 34 by 96 and 26 by 48 movable tunnel. We sell at the Bath Farmers Market, which is a new year-round market that started in our community in 2010, and we also sell to 2 local restaurants. And we've had farming experience from working on other farms, but we've owned our own farm and have been farming since 2008. And in addition to farming, I also work as the director of the Michigan Farmers Market Association, where I have the great pleasure of working with hundreds of farmers and vendors that sell at markets and many market managers. So I'm wearing 2 hats tonight and presenting from both experiences. John and I are going to talk through improving your farmers market sales, and we're also really excited to have conversations. So if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to write them in the chat box, and John and I will both respond to them. How we've kind of laid the evening out for you is that we're going to focus on 3 topics. Before we can talk about improving sales, we need to start with where you're at currently. So we're going to just kind of quickly talk through how farmers and how vendors can better understand where you're at, what your baseline is. And then we'll talk about clear expectations so that you're able to set some goals for improving your sales, and then the real fun stuff, strategies and techniques to improve your sales. And this is where we'll both provide examples, but then again, if any of you have any comments about how you're improving your sales and any strategies and techniques you have, that's a great place for conversation as well. So I think we might as well go ahead and get started. We're going to kind of move back and forth between John and I. And we wanted to start just with your understanding current sales and current costs. So before you go to a market, obviously these first 2 bullets on the left-hand side, your quantity of products and prices of products. Before you even get to market, you you have an idea of what your sales potential is based on what you're taking to market. And that might differ a little bit every market depending on the time of the year or the quantity of products that you have. And then you also have the cash that you take home, or in some market instances, if your farmer's market is accepting debit and credit cards, or if you're accepting the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program or Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program or SNAP, you may have other currencies, so that's take-home money and, of course, sales as well. And then there are the current costs that you have that you need to consider. This is just an idea. This is kind of the first step is really getting an inventory. I guess I'd call this a market inventory, or identifying what you're all taking to the market so that you can identify your costs. And we just put a few of the things that are really common to be taken to market. And of course, the the most obvious is left out, and that is your produce or your product. And that's because, you know, those costs are gonna really differ between market. But John, do you have anything that you want to add here in terms of what other additional things that you're taking to market, or that people really need to consider when they're trying to figure out what it costs them to go to market?
I think the list is pretty good. You've got the 3 80-gallon coolers. I happen to use freezers for chickens, but tables, canopy, vendor fees vary from place to place. I was giving that some thought and sharing with other people this afternoon about how much vendor fees are. Some places it's $250, some places it's $600 a season. Those things can't be forgotten as people go to market.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to give one example in how you can price some of these things out per market. So sometimes sometimes you make one initial investment, say your canopy. If you have a 10 by 10 tent or canopy, that's something that you pay for one time, but you actually use it every market, or the markets where you need it. And so one way to calculate your per market cost, and this is just an example. If we go to the slide before, you would need to do this for all of those items listed there. But if we're using this example, you can take your initial cost of the canopy, which in this example for us, we paid $199 plus 6% sales tax, and of course that's going to differ based on what canopy you use and what your sales tax is. But this is just an example, and you can switch out the numbers to make it work for you. So that cost was $210.94, and then because markets, obviously, there's weather, and tents seem to catch in the wind pretty easily, and they get banged up sometimes in the truck. Sometimes there's costs that go with repairing them, so we've paid $80 to repair our frame. And we're making the assumption that it's going to last us 3 years. And again, that certainly might differ depending on how many markets you use that. But when we divide that out, that total cost of the $210.94 plus the $80, we get $290.94. We divide that by 3, which is the lifetime, and we get a cost of $96.98 a year. And then we identify how many markets we have a year, and again, you can change these numbers out with numbers that make sense for you, and we can calculate that each market, that canopy costs us $3.73. So,
Drew?
Yeah, John, please add.
This is John. I gave it cost me $25 a Saturday for one of my markets, but it cost me $150 to drive there and back. So there were $175. And then I consider myself to be worth X number of dollars per hour, and I get up at 4, I leave at 5, and I don't get home until 4 in the afternoon. So really, to go to market is a $350 just in personal overhead, let alone tablecloths and tables and signs and things like that. So people need to know that it costs money to go to market. That's the bottom line.
Exactly. That's the exact point that we're trying to make. And sometimes you're right. Transportation is certainly one of the, it's pricey, and it also is very dependent on how far you're traveling to market. And so in our case, we travel 2 miles to market, so it costs us much less. But you're right. When you travel, long distances to market, that can add up quickly. And so while it may look, when you divide all those costs out, that, your cost for market is, in some cases, $25, or like John mentioned in his case, maybe $100, then you also need to add market labor. And for here, I've just figured out, based on $12 an hour, for some people this may seem really low, and then from some other research projects I've read where farmers are paying themselves as little as $1 an hour, this may seem high, but it's kind of a midpoint, and of course you need to plug in the number that makes sense for you. And this is just in terms of market. So this does not include your production time. It does not include your harvest time. Right now we're just talking about cost per market. If you add labor, then it costs us about $100 to go per market just to get there in terms of the market costs and the labor. And like John said, in his instances, it costs much more. John, do you want to add anything else there?
Well, I was thinking more about the previous slide, I think, when we talked about the cost of production. Do people really know how much does it cost to produce, say, plant, weed, protect, dig, wash, and package new potatoes? Or how much time does it take to pick a pail of 12 pounds of green beans? Because many times when I'm at market and people sort of grumble about their success or lack of success, their products are priced at a price point which would make me cringe, because I'd be barely able to pay my daughter her deserved wage for picking the green beans. Let me just share a quick story about a lady I met a number of years ago who was selling green beans for $1 a pound. And it kind of floored me. And I said, well, do you pay your children for picking them? And she said, yes, pretty much the whole $1. So what's left for the farm? And she said, well, yeah, that's true. I said, well, double your price, but then I'll lose my customers. I said, well, if you lose 1/3 of your customers, you'll still take home more money for the farm at the end of the day. You can afford to lose 25 customers if you're selling 100 pounds and taking in $100. If you sell 75 pounds at $2, you've got $150. The farm is ahead. And that's what we have to remember. It's about what we keep at the end of the day, not how much we gross or how much product we move.
Yeah, John, I think you made a really good point, and that's really one of the kind of strategies and techniques that I think we need to talk more about too, about pricing your product and making sure that you're charging a reasonable rate that really takes into consideration your cost of production. And probably cost of production is a whole nother webinar, Luke, if you're if you're interested in adding another idea to your list of webinar topics. But that is something that farmers really need to be considerate of, because in many cases it differs per market depending on what product you're taking in, but where it really comes into importance is when, like John said, you're pricing your product.
Do you want to move to the next slide, Drew?
Working on getting there. All right, so we kind of quickly went through needing to understand your costs before and where you're at currently. So if you have an idea of what you're making at a market right now, what your profits are, in terms of moving forward and improving your market sales, you need to have a clear idea of where you're at and what you want to accomplish. So obviously we all have economic goals, and we should. That's so important to farming, and it's what makes our farms work. And then there are sometimes other goals and other things that we want to accomplish when we go to market, because sometimes we can do multiple things in one endeavor. So in addition to understanding your sales potential and how much you want to make, there are things to consider, like, are you using the market for another means? Are you using the market because you also own a CSA and you're looking for a central CSA distribution point? Are you using the farmers market to market your on-farm stand? And so do you go to the farmers market where there are a lot of people, you take your product, and then every time they come to your stand you say, hey, you know, we have an on-farm stand and we're open 7 days a week or whatever. You should stop by and see us. We're just 5 miles out of town. So in a sense, you're using the market, the farmers market, to help you build sales on your farm. You might be using the market to build relationships with other people in your community, like chefs, if you're interested in making connections with restaurants or adding restaurant sales. And in some cases, you might be doing it, you know, for your community. You might be doing it because your community needs a space where they can, you know, residents can come together. And so there might be other goals. And I think that the point here is that you need to balance your economic and your non-economic goals. And for some people, you know, it's really important to break even and even make some money at a market. But if you're using a market for another means, then you have to balance what you want to accomplish with what you're making and the profits that you're taking home. Yep.
Drew? This is John. There's a couple of questions in the chat box, and I thought they were really appropriate for where we are at. At Dakota Harvest, Bob, no deals. Otherwise, they come to expect it. And Bob's right on. I don't give deals. There are certain vendors I've known over the years where it gets to be 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and they just want to clean off the table. And the price on the beets goes from $3.50 a bunch to $3 for $5 because they don't want to take anything home. But you really should take something home for your compost pile because people come to expect a deal, and the more people come at the end rather than at the beginning of the market. You can't afford to give stuff away. And then there was another question about, well, it was about dealing with the dealers, yeah, the shoppers who come at the end of the day to make a deal. You just don't do that. End of story. You still there, Drew? Did I lose you?
I am, and I agree with you. I think that it's important to maintain your pricing throughout the market. And some markets, some markets have rules against that in their, clearly written in their policies. Others don't. But I think that, especially in a 4-hour market, the quality of your product has not diminished. And if you're, paying attention to storing it properly, I think, the quality of your product at the end of the market should be at least similar to where it was when you got there.
Well, certainly folks who are storing their product the night before in a walk-in cooler overnight, when it comes to vegetables at the proper temperature, it's still going to be in very good condition by mid-morning or even later in the morning when you go to market. And it's really you only hurt yourself when you do that because you take less money home and you hurt your neighboring farmers that are selling at the farmers market because it hurts everybody in the long run. It just runs the market down. Our particular farm, we do use 2 of our market spots for a CSA distribution point, one more than the other, but it's just convenient, and we also market our CSA. But we wouldn't do the market if the market didn't stand by itself. You could say it's 2 revenue streams. The CSA gets dropped off there, and we do market there, but both have to be viable, both have to be profitable in order for us to be there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. John, there's a question I see in the chat box too about the best resources for determining your market price in addition to knowing your input costs. Do you want to talk about how you price your products?
Yeah, I've read, you can go online, you can look in books, but the best way to set your price is to think about how much it costs you to buy that acre of farm ground, and in my neighborhood it's $20,000. So I know I have a very valuable resource. Then the other thing that I keep in mind is I watch my workers. I know how long it takes them to plant potatoes. I know how long it takes to dig 40 pounds. I know how long it takes to wash 40 pounds. And I know how long it takes me to get it to market. And so I want to make sure that we're getting a certain number of dollars worth of product harvested every time. When we're picking green beans, I'd like to see 10 pounds of green beans, 12 pounds, 15 pounds picked per person per hour, so that the farm is generating $40, $50, $60 per hour per person when they're harvesting. And so that's all part of the pricing thinking. Just see a quick note, we do donate leftover produce at the end of the day to the food bank in Sioux City. Jordan says donating in Orange, Iowa City, they have an organization table to table, and you can do that. There's a question for me, John, do you take up a loss on any particular vegetable and expect it to make it up elsewhere? Yes. Green onions. A few other things I can't name off the top of my head. We grow about 60 different varieties or types of vegetables, and I haven't actually sat down and figured out the cost and the value of each particular item. But we have a gut feeling when we're harvesting something, how long it takes and how long it takes to grow, whether it's worth doing again, and how much demand there is. Because we do run a CSA, we do have enough all the time of different things to have a variety in our box.
Yeah, and I would add to that, John, that we also we don't necessarily take a loss, but we know that there are some things that we come close to breaking even on, that they're not a profit maker for us, but some things we grow for different reasons. Some things like shelling peas I just love, and so there are certain things that I think it's important for farmers to grow things that you love to eat, and it helps sell other things.
And parsnips. Parsnips. My wife loves parsnips. I have to grow parsnips to please my wife.
Yeah, there's those considerations. Definitely.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of growing vegetables and feeding yourself and feeding your community, that you have a wide variety. But you have to be very careful about how much of that item you grow so that it doesn't take over the farm, and then you end up selling lots of one thing that really doesn't make you any money.
Yes.
I don't grow any sweet corn, for example. I grow no sweet corn.
We don't grow sweet corn either. We don't have enough land, and we're not able to grow enough to make money on it. All right, let's move forward about this idea when about finding a farmer's market that's right for you. So one thing, I see that there's lots of people on here from all across the country, and one thing that I think is pretty well known is that the number of farmers markets is increasing in Michigan, but all across the country. And so that means there's more and more markets, and really markets differ, and we already got into that. John mentioned how markets differ in vendor fees. Markets differ in terms of management structure and their policies. Most farmers markets have follow state regulations, but really are managed at an individual level and have their individual market rules and regulations that dictate who can sell there, what can be sold there, and all those rules that are at the individual market level. Some markets require that you carry liability insurance, others don't. And then there are things that you want to consider, like who's selling at the market and what's already being sold there, who's shopping at the market, and does that fit into your product mix? What's the atmosphere at the market? I always recommend that before trying a market, you stop by a market, shop the market to see what that market's like, and if you feel comfortable there and if it would be a good fit for you. Some markets, and I would say even more and more markets, are starting to do special events, whether that's having live music or cooking demonstrations or events for children. Markets are starting to bring in more and more people through those special events, and some markets participate in food assistance programs and coordinate those for farmers and vendors, and if that's of interest to you, that's something to look for too. The point here is that not every market is going to be a great fit for you, but there are a lot of markets out there, and it's important to find one that is a good fit for you. And John, you sell at 3 different markets, so maybe you can add from your experience, how you find a market that's a good fit for you.
When we began, we sold roadside in Sioux Center where we live, and there was no official farmers market. Today there is, and my oldest daughter mans that stand on Wednesdays because it's not busy enough for me. It doesn't fit with my personality. I can't stand still long enough to work that market. It's a small town. I go to Sioux Falls every Saturday. I began doing that 1 year before my wife went to Sioux City. It's a vendor-run market. It's a producer-only market. Vendors make up the board of directors, which are chosen by the vendors. I happen to be on that board, and we have our own bylaws, and we regulate ourselves, and we have two hats when we're board members. We are looking out for the best interests of the market, and we're looking out as a grower, as a participant in that market. My wife, Jenna, goes to the Sioux City market, and I probably wouldn't fit there. I went once or twice with her over the years, but it's run by a management team, and then they bring in the vendors, and they bring in more vendors all the time, and it brings in challenges that we don't face in Sioux Falls, such as the more and more vendors, but not necessarily more consumers. It's just a challenge, a different vendor mix, a different situation.
John, I think you brought up
Both markets have a lot of atmosphere, special events. The Sioux City one has the WIC program going for it. In South Dakota, we don't have a WIC program, so we don't have that item at all.
John, I think you
WIC is,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna.
Well, Luke was asking me to explain what WIC is, and that's Women, Infants, and Children, and it's a coupon that allows people to purchase $39 or $42 worth of vegetables at the farmer's market, or some SNAP, Senior Nutrition Assistance Program. And in Michigan, you have something too, Drew,
Yep,
right? Like that?
We have both our federal programs, the Farmers Market Nutrition Program through WIC, which in Michigan we call Project Fresh. A lot of states rename them, so the program names differ a little bit. And we also have SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is redeemed on our Michigan Bridge Card. And we have about 80, last year we had 82 markets accepting Bridge Cards. So it's definitely a growing area for markets. But what I wanted to mention, John, is that you brought up a really good point that finding a farmer's market for you is not only about finding a farmer's market for your business, but it's also finding the right person on your farm team, whether that's your wife or your daughter or someone that works for you, finding the right person to go to the right market. So I think that's a really good distinction to make as well.
Yeah, it's all part of the atmosphere. The personality needs to fit the atmosphere.
Great. So the fun part about tonight is talking through different strategies and techniques to improve sales. And John and I focused on a few things, but then broke it into some areas. And this is where hopefully we can keep up with the chat box and make sure that we're looking at your comments and questions as well. But right off the bat, we think that to improve your sales, you need to be professional. You need to focus on your display. You need to set the right price, and you need to educate consumers. You need to educate your shoppers.
Drew, there's a couple of questions. We should really just take care of them because they've been dittoed. Keeping greens cool at the market. I keep my greens in the overnight at about 32 to 36 degrees in a walk-in cooler, and on an 80 to 90 degree day in Sioux Falls, they're still cool at the end of the market. You can put them in a cooler if you're not on display, but mine move fast enough that it's not an issue for me. I always have good greens until end of market. And then the question was, how much does the farmer expect the market to promote the market, and therefore all of its vendors, signage, advertising, market website, Facebook. In Sioux Falls, we have a small budget. Each vendor contributes to the budget, and we decide how to spend it. And we have a small advertising team, and we use a little bit of Facebook, a little bit of website. We have a market website. We have ad in the local paper. We do a little bit of radio. A lot of it's word of mouth and getting friends of the market to work for us. Other places may have gotten a grant or have sponsors, and that gets word out too. But the farmer has to do their part too. And once you've met someone, that you tell them that you're at that market, and you keep always be marketing. It's the ABM plan. Always be marketing. Always tell your friends and everybody you meet what you do and where you do it.
Great. And I see that there's another question. Are there costs to the farmer to use SNAP? And the answer there is SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's formerly the food stamp program, and there are a couple different models out there that markets are using. In some cases, individual farmers can be authorized by USDA FNS, which stands for Food and Nutrition Services, and they can it differs in each state because each state has a different EBT contractor. EBT stands for Electronics Benefits Transfer. And in Michigan, if you're authorized, farmers have access to a free hardwired device, which means you get a point-of-sale device that needs to use electricity and needs to use a phone line. If you are not able to, if you don't have access to an electricity and telephone line, markets then you need a wireless machine, and there are costs in Michigan associated with that. In certain states, their EBT contractor provides wireless machines, so you'd need to check into that. And then another model is that some markets are using a central terminal model where they're accepting SNAP for the farmers, and in those models, a customer would go to the market, they would swipe their EBT card for whatever they're going to spend, and then the market manager or whoever's running the booth would give them tokens. And in those cases, sometimes the market charges farmers, and sometimes it doesn't, depending on if they have outside support to cover those costs or not.
Drew, the first item on the slide up is be professional.
Yes.
I'm just looking at the picture on the screen next to myself. There's my wife, and she's got a big smile. It really helps when you're at market to smile and not to sit down. People who bring lawn chairs don't expect to sell much.
I agree with that. I think that
I actually have had people, I've seen people bring lawn chairs to market and sit down when the show gets started. That doesn't work that way. If you're going to work for me, you're going to stand up all morning.
And John, I'll add to that. I know that many of us are very busy people and we're always multitasking, but I think that it's important to stand up, and for those of us that have smartphones, if you can, not check your email and or text message or be talking on the phone, especially when shoppers are around. It's really important to give your attention to those people that are shopping at the market.
And when you have a quiet moment, it's really important, again, like item 2, focus on your display, just to make sure everything is displayed properly all the time so that it's always up, always filled up, stacked up, and that everything looks good so that when the next person comes along, they see what they want right away. Because the transactions have to be fast. A lot of people don't do farmers markets because they can make more money going to a restaurant or a store and dropping a whole truckload at a time. And what we're actually doing is got to think about our revenue per transaction. If somebody comes and buys an onion for me for $1, they're going to get $1 worth of time. But if a lady comes by with 2 reusable shopping bags and she wants 3 heads of lettuce and she wants 5 pounds of potatoes and 6 packages of green beans and 2 chickens, she's going to get more of my time.
Yeah, great. All right, should we move forward maybe with some photos? So the whole point of this is making sure that you're able to stand out in a crowd. And John and I have both talked about you need to catch their eye, and I think that this is important for new customers as well as repeat customers. So initially, it's important to catch someone's eye with your whole display as one, and then it's important to have your farm identified so that people can recognize you when they come back the next week and the next week and the next week, so that they get to know you and where you're at. And part of this whole farmers market world is the connection between shoppers and and you. And so it helps if people are able to know who you are, if you can identify yourself. And you can do that through a lot of different ways. There's, signage that some markets do, and I think the photo on the right is actually from the Des Moines Farmers Market, where they identify their vendors, and this is something that the market does because these signs are throughout the market. But you yourself can create signage and have photos of your farm, and you can do it through conversations with your shoppers. If they ask questions about your farm, just explaining more about what you're doing. Okay. I had lost the chat box there for a minute, but I think we're back. John, what do you want to add about identifying yourself and your stand?
Well, I guess you can see this is early in the season, and I've got 24 feet of frontage. It's 2 stalls. I've got my sign on my van that says the Cornucopia. It's 3 feet by 10. And then I've got my pastured poultry sign taped to my truck window because that's the only place where I can figure I can put it. I got a gray tub in my hand on the picture on the left. I'm filling it with water. I dip my carrots in water before I put them on the pile. We'll sell 150 bunches of carrots on a Saturday morning, and I'll have them all nice and shiny and clean and sparkling in the gray dull light of morning. But and then I put signs on the front of my wooden boxes and on the black crates that have the price clearly identified. When we're busier, I will turn the 2 tables on the end so I have a U shape, and then I'm closer. My butt is closer to the van, but it gives me more table frontage.
Great. Let's go back to the chat box. John, do you accept credit cards individually, and do you have minimums?
Currently, Jan and I do not take any plastic. We just deal in cash and checks. And we haven't had much demand for credit cards. I do have a competitor across the way from me who takes credit cards, and they have a higher phone. If you're going to have a phone that takes credit cards, there's a data cost, and I just couldn't see recouping that cost at the present time how we do business.
Okay, and I'll add to that. We don't accept, Adam and I don't accept credit cards individually. We've discussed it and may consider it in the future, but our farmers market accepts credit and debit cards at our market manager tent, and they have $5 script that's been laminated, and so in a sense it's like a $5 gift card that we accept. We can give cash change for that, so if someone doesn't make a $5 purchase, or if they give us 3 of them, we can make change for those, and then we turn them back into our market manager at the end of the day, and we get a check normally the next week. I think it's about a week or 10-day turnaround time that we get reimbursed for debit and credit card sales. And then there's a question in here. Have you worked directly with your local WIC office and or senior centers to spread the word about Farmers Market Nutrition Program vouchers? And if yes, how did it increase sales? I'll start with that, and then John, if you want to add to that. We in Michigan, a number of our markets are working directly with their local WIC offices or senior centers, and in some cases, some of our local WIC offices actually distribute the coupons at the market, and this has been seen at some of our markets like our Saginaw Farmers Market and our Flint Farmers Market. They work so that distribution is happening in the market, and yes, they have seen an increase in sales, and basically I think that's due to an increase in redemption rates. People are getting their vouchers at the market, and then they're using them immediately. So things like that have certainly shown an increase, and I think that working with your local WIC office or senior center is really important. John, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I saw that Janet was typing in the chat box, so maybe I should wait. But our experience has been that it's not a big percentage of our business. It's not a target market for us. And our experience has also been that people who come with those types of coupons and WIC checks, once they spend those, they don't come back again. And we're looking for people who come every Saturday for 26 Saturdays. We're looking for long-term business.
Okay, and I think that I'll just add to that. I think that's something too that people may see differently in different markets, and so I think that's that's really important for farmers to pay attention to, like you said, identifying who your target is and paying attention to what how consumers are shopping in a specific market. All right, before we move on, John, did you want to say anything else about displays?
I always set up the same way every time. I always start from one end and work to the other end so people know. People who come for potatoes always know where to go to get the potatoes. People who come for sweet potatoes always know where the sweet potatoes are so that they don't get lost. The carrots are always on the same spot so people know where the stuff is.
Good point.
A couple of questions just popped up. I'll deal with them quick,
please.
Drew. Nikki asked about selling flowers. There are vendors who grow vegetables and sell flowers at both of our markets and do very well. And do customers place web orders? We get phone calls. We get emails from people. We do not have an online market yet. It's something that one of my competitors does and something I'm very interested in doing.
Okay.
Is getting a double stall always worth it? Like this photo right here with you paid for 2 stall spaces?
Yeah, so we paid for 2 stall spaces in Sioux Falls and in Sioux City too. And when I went from, there's a story behind that, I guess. When I was at 1 stall vendor, I saw my increase in sales flattened out at a certain point. And then when I went to 2 stalls, my sales more than doubled. So it did more than pay for itself to go to 2 stalls because I did 3 times the business the next year when I went from 1 stall to 2 stalls.
Great. John, I see another question in here about how you handle or account for end-of-the-market farmer-to-farmer trades. And I'll answer it, and then I'll let you answer it. We initially, when we first started the market in 2000, probably for the first year, I kept track of kind of the value of how much we traded, just so I would have an idea of it. And to be honest, I have stopped accounting for it. We're normally getting something for it, so it's something that we try to be really careful about the records we keep and identifying which records are important for us. And after a year, we haven't accounted for it any longer. So, John, do you account for farmer-to-farmer trades?
In our own books, we don't see any farmer-to-farmer trades personally. And I know there are a couple of much larger producers that will make arrangements with somebody who does a lot of canning to buy their leftovers, for example, but it's not something that's regulated or watched. I should add that these markets are also abide by all the rules by the local health departments. So, with cutting samples, for example, you just don't cut a melon. That would lead to a significant difficulty. Yeah, City of Sioux Falls health inspector walks through our market about 4 or 5 times a season with his little notepad.
Yeah, and I think all of the markets that we sell at as well are, under health department. Of course, when you're selling at markets, it's important to make sure you're following all those state regulations as well. And there's a question in here. I think, John, you may have answered, but just going back to, do you allow customers to place a web order to pick up at the farmer's market? And I believe you said that you didn't allow that. We, in most circumstances, we don't have a kind of a web order in place, but we do have some of our regular shoppers that buy a lot that can't. Our market's an afternoon market from 3 to 7, and so some of those markets that we know are regular, they come back every week, and they know that they they normally purchase a larger quantity. If they're going to be late someday, or 1 week they can't get there till 6 o'clock, we do have people email us, and we set aside sometimes 5 or 6 orders. Just we put them in the back in a cooler for people that are going to be late to the market, and that's something that it does take extra time. But for some of our regular shoppers who buy in larger quantities, we do that.
Oh, Drew, I do take telephone and emails ahead of time. What I was referring to, web is internet, online farmers market. I don't do that currently. They're like locallygrown.net or a store online at my website. We don't do that yet. But
okay, so it sounds like we do the same thing. We both take email or phone if someone calls or sends an email, but neither of us are yet doing the online markets.
Yeah, and as a market, we don't have there's no fixed pricing. I mean, each vendor sets their own prices. There's not a minimum or a maximum. We encourage those who think little of their product and price it low to raise their prices because we feel sorry for them, but realistically nobody can tell somebody else what to charge. That's called price fixing.
Yep.
That's addressed with Chuck's question. Can you change the slide so I don't see myself all the time?
Let's move forward into one of the other important things at your farmers market is to identify yourself, but also identify your products. And this gets into some of the important questions about pricing your product as well, and being able to differentiate your products from something that a consumer might find in a grocery store or may find in another place. Your products at a farmer's market can be unique, and the value of your products in terms of freshness is really important. So these are just a couple of photos from a farmer's market here in Michigan where there's an orchard that sells at one time about 100 different varieties of apples, and they've gone through many of them heirloom apples, and they've gone through and identified them and kind of provided the story of the products. And this is something that I think is really important. If you have a product that's special, people might not know it just from looking at it, but if they have some time to linger at your stand, they can read about it, and it can really help influence the value people put on your products. John, do you want to add to that?
It's great to create a story with any kind of product. When I sell potatoes, I sell potatoes with a name, and Yukon Gold comes from Canada, and the German Butterball comes from Colorado, or the real Colorado comes from Colorado, or the Dakota Rose comes from North Dakota. If you have a story with a product, it catches people's attention.
All right. Do you want to go to the next slide? Or do you want to answer? There's some questions in here. John, do you guys do value?
Well, Dakota Oreo is answering the question. So is Jen. They're doing a good job.
Great. John, do you grow? Do you want to talk about certified naturally grown and kind of how that compares with organic? There's a question in there. If you
certified naturally grown, how it compares with certified organic?
I mean, there's a.
I'm certified naturally grown. Go ahead. We're not certified organic. We're certified naturally grown.
And we're not certified organic either. We do follow organic production principles. We're not certified.
Right. We also follow organic practices just because that's what certified naturally grown requires. But I'm not going to, it's like gaps. I'm not going to go for the overhead. So.
All right. John, do you ever leave market early if it's slow?
No. Both our markets, we stayed to the last end. Sometimes the last half hour is very slow, but you never know who comes right at the end and buys 10 chickens.
We never leave market early either. It's in our market policy that vendors need to stay to the end. And I agree with John. You never know who's going to come in the last 5 or 10 minutes. And we've talked about display already a little bit, that you need to really focus on your display from the product to the overall the way that you look. And there's a picture of John's display, and in addition to kind of the overall setup, I'll let John talk about having the abundant and diverse products. You've done a great job of putting contrasting colors next to each other in these photos, and I think that really draws the eye.
I've been trained, I guess, well, but it's just a matter of wanting to be eye appealing. I often stand back on the customer side at 7:30 in the morning, make sure that it catches the eye of people walking by. And it's very important to us that we bring the cleanest possible product to market. It really starts when you start digging, when we plant, when we harvest. We're thinking about what is it going to look like. Some of the practices that we use in the field benefit us when we go to market.
Yeah, and John, you also mentioned having you have very clean products here, and I think that that's something too that catches the eye. And with every display, is that making sure that you've washed and packed and stored your products properly is really important, because that's what customers look for as well.
Jenna notes here that I once had a chef tell me you eat with your eyes, so sparkling clean produce is very important. I do have a number of chefs who shop the market, and then they take their shopping to the restaurant and call it the farmer's market salad mix of the week or market mix of the week. And I've had a number of people tell me that ours is the cleanest, and they tell me that regularly. And so that's what brings them back. It's about repeat customers.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. We have recently started selling to 2 restaurants, and I think that it's definitely, chefs certainly, look at products and eat with their eyes, and it's true that everyone does that. And we've had some of the chefs tell us that our product is as clean as they get it, and that really makes their job easier, and they really love getting high quality product like that. So I think that's very important. Do we want to move on? There were some questions about samples, and I think they've been answered in the chat box already. I will mention that I think John mentioned that you need to be really considerate of what your state health regulations are. And I'll point out, for those of you that are from Michigan, the Michigan Farmers Market Association has worked with our Department of Agriculture and Rural Development to put a guideline together for providing safe food samples at farmers markets. One of the questions did ask about providing samples of whole products, and like cherry tomatoes, and I think that's a really simple way to provide samples. So in the picture here with strawberries that were picked today, you could see that you could offer samples, and I'm going to speak for Michigan because I know that some state regulations differ, but you could offer samples of anything that's uncut, fresh, unprocessed produce. So that would be strawberries, any type of really small fruit, berries. Could be cherry tomatoes, could be carrots or radishes, and I think that sometimes providing samples, one thing that we've seen in our market is if we provide samples of some of the smaller hooker eye turnips, it might be something that most people are not familiar with, or they've slowly become more familiar with over the course of the last year and a half, but just by tasting it, they would then buy a bunch and have a better idea of what they were taking home. So for us, we do provide samples when it's appropriate. And in some states, there are guides that will help you know how you can sample whatever product you have. John, anything you want to add about samples?
We notice when there's an item like kohlrabi or red meat radish, something people haven't had before, and we get a knife out and give them a slice, that we often sell more. So you gotta be mindful of the rules. And but it's always people. Sometimes when I have a regular customer and they buy several regular items, but they never tried something different, I may give them a small bunch, or I might give them a sample of a small tomato to take home. And the next week they come back and they buy that item.
Yeah, that's a great tip, and we do the exact same thing, especially with regular shoppers. We give them something they haven't tried, and I would say too, in the beginning of the season, when we're first starting to harvest tomatoes, like middle or late June from the hoop house, if we have just a few maybe 6 or 8 pints of tomatoes, the ones that we didn't eat. Sometimes we'll throw something special into a bag with people that are regular shoppers. It's nice to do something to make people feel special, especially if they're very loyal to you in terms of shopping at the market.
Sometimes carrots come loose from the bunch. They snap off the top and are in the bin. Then if there's a child with a mom or a grandchild with a grandmother or grandfather, I will offer them the loose carrot, and some kids really like that.
We do the exact same thing.
Nikki Dahlman asks, what are good research tools for finding farmers market prices? Are there any good websites? It really is it's about local food, local farmers market, local production costs. The best thing to do is to walk through your farmers market, and if you believe you have the best product at that market, add 25 cents to the highest price, and that's your price.
Yeah, I agree with John. I think you have to be really conscious of your quality and what other prices are being charged at your market. And I personally have not yet come across a great site that's documenting what's being charged at markets. And I would say prices change even in some communities within 10 miles. Different things are being charged at different markets. So I think you need to focus on what's happening in the local area. That being said, I would mention that this afternoon I listened in on a webinar that the National Farmers Market Coalition did on price comparisons at farmers markets. And if anyone's interested in a great resource that focused on value and affordability and kind of the contrast between those two, you could check out the National Farmers Market Coalition website, which is just farmersmarketcoalition.org, and they have webinars just like the one that we're on tonight that they post the recording to. So that might be a resource for people that are interested in thinking about pricing at the farmers market. We've already talked a lot about educating your shoppers and making sure that they know the value of the product that you have there, how it was grown, how it differs from other products. You can, like John said, you can tell them what's special about certain potatoes that you have there, and just telling them your story and making sure that they know how good everything that you have tastes and how they can use it. I think that we find ourselves, sometimes I wish I had more time to do this, but anytime we provide a recipe or something extra at the market, it helps sell our produce. And a lot of times we talk about how to cook things, how we regularly eat things, and it's all about that conversation with your consumer. John?
Yeah, you're right, Drew. The best thing for me to do is to take along somebody who cooks. And when people ask me, how do I fix this, instead of saying it's not broken, I ask them to speak to one of my daughters who prepares meals, and then they can get tips on how to repair food that they may have not eaten before. One of the things that we've done is create little photo albums of 3x5 prints of things that happen at our farm that we've kept over the years. And we were one of the first to use high tunnels. We've had high tunnels for 5 years. And people would be amazed at the 10 or 12 or 15 different items I would have on the first Saturday of May. in Sioux Falls. So then people would say, how did you do this? And I would show them pictures of my high tunnel, and that would confirm that I grew it, that I didn't bring it in from somewhere else. And also helps with chickens, showing people how I raise my chickens, moving them twice a day to fresh grass in portable pens. People who are concerned about humane treatment and having chickens protected from predators, but having access to the outdoors, fresh grass, fresh air, it really sets the stage for conversation.
Definitely. I'm reading back through the chat box, trying to make sure we don't miss anything. John, do you allow CSA members to shop at your stand at the market?
Of course. They want more. They want to give me more money. I'll take it any day of the week.
So they pick up their CSA share, and then do you have that? People also shopping? Okay.
Yeah, that happens. There are several customers in our CSA who, when they pick up the box, they ask Jana or my daughter what's in the box, or they open the box and look at it, and then they go over and buy 3 additional packages of spinach or 3 more heads of lettuce, especially people who are big into eating greens or have a slightly larger than average family. They will buy more.
So the market's adding to that CSA sale, which is great.
Yes.
All right. And then we talked a little bit already about food assistance benefits, and for some farmers, this is really added to their sales, so you can see what works in your area and might be something that you're interested in looking into. For those of you in Michigan, I should mention that in 2 weeks, let me check the date, on Monday, February 20th, we're having a webinar on increasing farm profitability by accepting food assistance benefits, and that's at 10 o'clock Eastern time. So if anyone's interested, that might be another resource to learn more about that. And I think that, just we're going to open it up here for more conversation and questions both in the chat and other questions that people have been holding to the end. But farmers markets are a place for you to make money and are a place for you to improve your sales. You need to find the right market. You need to keep records so that you have an idea of how much you're really making, what it costs to produce something, what it costs to go to market, and what you're selling. And then there's cash sales, which are fantastic and we all rely on. And there's other ways that you can add additional income too. Especially, I think I recently heard that more than 80% are that people ages 18 to 35, which is a large age span, more than 80% of their purchases are on plastic, and that's something that I know is increasing. So just something for us to be conscious of as we move forward.
Drew, this is John. I got a question. John, have you tried Freedom Rangers? I'll quickly, no. And then Luke asked me to talk about record keeping. We have benefited greatly from 2 farms. They've been mentors without them knowing it. One is Paul and Sandy Arnold. You can Google Paul and Sandy Arnold. And they have done a wonderful job of educating other farmers on how to grow and how to sell and what they do. And what they're very, very good at is record keeping. And we've adapted some of their practices to our operation. I keep harvest records. I know how much is gathered every time we harvest, and I know where it comes from. And we keep a notebook for each market, and we write down what we take to market, how much goes to market, how much comes back to market, or how much is donated, and then how much each item is sold for. So we know that we can go back 3, 4, 5 years now where we know what we sell on each Saturday, not only in terms of total dollars, but also by item, so that we know how many bunches of carrots we can sell or how many bunches would be maybe too much. And so record keeping is extremely important about getting ready for market, thinking about how much to take to market, and where you go to market. So we keep a notebook on each one for every day. You can also track the weather or special events or occasions. A thing like A cultural event in the park across the street from our farmers market will affect parking, it will affect traffic flow, it will affect our sales. Rain does not affect my sales in Sioux Falls at all. I'm under a roof. But it might affect sales in Sioux City where we use Easy Up still.
And John, I completely agree with you that record keeping is essential, and Paul and Sandy are mentors to us as well. Adam has talked with both of them extensively, and at conferences we've been at together, and you're right, you can just learn more about some of the resources they have out there online. But for us, we do a very, very similar, we keep records, you know, in QuickBooks, we keep records in Excel spreadsheets, and we also keep records in notebooks about, you know, when we're on the farm, how much time things take so that we can think through cost of production. We keep records of what we plant, when we plant it, you know, when we're harvesting, how long things take, and then for each market we keep records of what we took to the market and what we brought home, and that gives us an idea of how much we sold and, of course, how much money we made. And it's been really important for us to be able to see, to be able to keep track of that, to see what makes sense for our business and where we can grow.
Yeah, that's another person I was going to say two names, two farms. Is Rock Spring Farm, Chris Blanchard in northeast Iowa. We've heard him speak a number of times, and he's always inspiring, and he's always making me think about how much work it is and how much I ought to charge for my product.
He's also going to be a Farminar speaker on March 6th? So Chris Blanchard will be on the Farminar Tuesday, March 6th, talking about financial projections and business planning.
And there's questions in the chat box about the price of peppers, and colored peppers are worth $2 a piece. I don't know which basket. It wasn't my basket that you were looking at, but I'd go for the $2 a piece. Nice red ones.
John, there's a question in here too from Don about how would you suggest someone get started for market farming?
We just went ahead and did it. I think if I knew what I know now when I was 25, I would be dangerous. If I was 25, or if I was, I don't know, you know, they always say it's best to work for somebody. I've met a lot of people who've worked for different people. It would be very interesting to work at Rock Spring Farm or at Paul and Sandy Arnold's for a summer or two and learn how it works and what happens.
John, did you have any farming experience or growing, you know, agricultural experience, or did you just jump right in? Okay, are we
back? Sorry about that.
All right. I was going to say, I think I lost the audio, but
We're back.
All right, I'm here
Drew?
too.
Okay, yeah, kind of scary.
So one of the John, you said that you just you started and hadn't worked on other farms, did you have agricultural experience or any experience growing before you jumped right in?
Jan and I gardened from the first year we were married. When we lived in town just 3 or 4 years before we moved to the country, we actually grew enough food to feed our entire family. So we were experienced vegetable gardeners for a family, yes. My father was a gardener, and my heritage is agriculture. Didn't grow up on a farm, but I've milked cows, and I've planted corn, and I've done other farm-like things.
Okay, I think that it's important to have some experience like that, whether you work on someone else's farm or you have experience from your family, that having some type of production experience is going to help you succeed and help you be able to, if you start on a small scale and have some of that experience, it will help you be able to scale up eventually.
Yeah, scaling up is a challenge. When we started going to market, we maybe had 1/4 of an acre, and then we had 1/2 an acre, and then we had 1 1/4 acres, and then we had 1 1/2 acres, and we always add. Jana likes to plant things. She likes to try new seeds, and she'll tell you, I like rototilling. I like operating my walk-behind Troy-built tiller or my tractor now with a bigger tiller, and we just keep going. And we've run out of space, actually. If you follow national trends and look in the papers, you know Iowa farmland is very expensive, but we'll keep looking for an opportunity.
All right, and there's a couple questions on here. John, what breed of chicken do you free range?
Cornish cross.
And
it's what everybody expects.
And what do you pay your employees?
As much as I can for what they're worth. I'm not going to get into specifics about how we pay or what we pay, but they get paid a paycheck. Even our children get paid.
All right, and we currently don't have employees that are working on our farms. We do have some regular volunteers that we trade produce for, but it's really informal. So I think that you have to be really thoughtful about how much it's worth having employees.
The question was raised, how many people are growing in high tunnels, and 60% of tonight's participants, 62% grow in high tunnels. The best way to find out what's most beneficial to grow in a high tunnel, Nikki, is to grow the things you want to grow and keep track of how much revenue you get per square foot. And Danielle, we have 4 daughters, but only 2 work regularly at home. The other 2 have off-the-farm jobs that pay more than I will pay, can pay. And then we have 2 or 3 other students to help us in the summertime and 2 adults in the fall after school goes back in.
And
our CSA is about 20%, well, 15% of our business.
And I would say for us, I'm going back to Nikki's question, I think John's right on. You have to think about your cost of production and what you're making. For us, the best crops in our tunnels are exactly like you said, our salad greens and our tomatoes in the summer are the most profitable for us in our tunnels. We do grow other things, though, besides those. And I agree with Chuck. For us, tomatoes are a great crop because when you get beautiful tomatoes early on in the season, you can get a price premium for those. There's a question, John. How many broilers per year?
We're well over 1,000 right now in terms of broilers per year.
You want to talk about your processor?
And we use a processor. We don't process on the farm. We process at Hospers, B&B Poultry Processing, Hospers, Iowa. It's a federally inspected facility. They have a crew of about 6 people. They do about 350 birds a time.
And there's a question on here. How do we sell and package our salad greens? We have 2 different mixes. We have 3 different mixes. We have a lettuce mix, we have a salad mix, and we have a spicy salad mix. And we package them in 4-ounce plastic bags. So they're in plastic bags in 4-ounce packages. There's a question on here, John. Which do you enjoy most, farm sales, market, or CSA?
Farmers market. Farmers market. It's most enjoyable. The CSA is nice. I like bringing the box. When we do the fall CSA, we deliver the box to the home, and I really like the relationship. But I enjoy going to market and meeting people every time. And when it's a CSA, you don't always see people.
Yeah, I agree that the market's a fun place to be. It's a place where you get to interact with a lot of people. You get to hear what people think of your products. And we also sell to restaurants. Adam deals more with our restaurant sales. I think that, it's good having a diversity in terms of your markets, and it's nice having relationships with chefs, because when you get to eat your food from a restaurant, you learn even more about how good your product is. And John, how do you price your broilers?
By the pound. Both the cut up parts and the whole bird is priced by the pound.
Right, and there was a question on there. When do your first broiler chicks arrive?
It depends on the year. I usually start them in early March, mid-March, so I have them ready for May. It depends how much time we will have grass and how much snow there's on the ground and how cold it looks like it's going to be, and how many I have left in the freezer from the previous season. Ben's got a really good question, Drew. How do you decide when the CSA has had enough and we can take the rest to market? Our rule of thumb has basically been, what does a family of 4 need to eat for a week in terms of vegetables? We don't want to give them too much, because then they think, oh, the full box, the full share, the regular standard share is too much, and they'll go to a half share, which we don't want them to do. So we carefully, 7 to 9, 10 items, and we look at it and say, hey, this is good value. And edible in a whole week.
Yeah, I am,
Drew,
and we don't do
there?
a CSA, so I don't.
Okay. And we package the greens in the microgreens. I don't do microgreens. We package greens in packages, sandwich bags, plastic bags from Hy-Vee, but I don't do microgreens. For our CSA this year, it's going to be $525 for 18 weeks. So 18 weeks divided by, or $525 divided by 18, I think that's in the neighborhood of $30 per week. But we just tell them that the amount is for a family of 4 for the season, $525.
All right, and for head lettuce, we do sell head lettuce. We sell it for normally $2 a head. And we'll package it typically in a plastic bag, a head per bag.
Yep. Drew, my romaine goes for $3.50 or $4.
Maybe I should move to Iowa.
And I
That's fantastic.
know enough of it.
Well, he's got all those employees today, though.
Yeah. We pay our children,
Drew. Mine are 3 and 3 months, so I've got at least a year.
Train them young. Get them started. Put a playpen in the garden.
John, what's the best thing your market manager could do to help your business?
Stay out of my way. Well, we don't have a market manager in Sioux Falls. The worst thing that I have to do in Sioux Falls is when somebody's breaking the rules, and it seems to be the vice president's job to tap them on the shoulder and say, look, did you look at the rule book? Do you know that, this is what we agreed to at the beginning of the year? But down in Sioux City, they have a market manager, and they just keep traffic moving and answer people's questions and connect with people in the media to get attention, make sure the website's up to date, make sure Facebook's up to date, make sure that the music people are coming in to entertain folks, or the clowns, or the 4-H people. They also have wagons down there to help people carry big pumpkins or watermelons from the farmers market to their cars, stuff like that. Customer service is what farmers market managers are for.
All right, and there's a question in here. Do you ever get customers asking for grocery store special prices? To be honest, we don't get a lot of customers asking for grocery store prices. We do sometimes. I was telling someone the other day, we have a woman who buys from us pretty regularly every week, and she tells us almost every week that our salad mix is expensive. And I normally answer, well, now I've come to the point by answering, so does that mean you want 2 bags? And she normally says yes. So sometimes I think there are people that, sometimes people complain about prices, but we don't get a lot of people complaining about our prices.
It's quite often that I've had a person try to negotiate, dicker, barter, and they simply don't understand. And despite explaining why or where it comes from or what it's about, and then I'll just say, no, we're not going to do that. It's not a win-win, and they walk away disgusted with me. The next person said, thank you. You should never give a discount. You should never cut your price. You should actually get more than what you're charging. And it's really not fair to our regular customers that we give anybody a discount of any kind. It's not fair to them. They've been paying, say, $5. Ben Saunders says $5 for green beans. I think that's a good idea. I couldn't do it for $3. I think we do ours at $4 right now. But if you're going to charge regular customers $4 or $5 a pound for green beans, then to sell that to 1 or 2 people at a lower price is really hurting your regular clientele.
All right, there's some questions about popular head lettuces. I think John might have answered that already. Romaine, I would say romaine is probably one of our most popular as well. I personally like the butter crunch head lettuce, like the hermosas, but I think probably romaine is most popular at our market.
Butterhead's a really good lettuce. I really like butterhead myself. We do a lot of loose leaf lettuce. We do a lot of spinach, a lot of kale. We do a lot of greens. There's
a question in here: if you display head lettuces outside of the bag before purchase, and if yes, how? We do sometimes display our head lettuce out of the bag, and sometimes we also display our salad mix just in a basket out of the bag. We normally mist it and keep changing it. We keep our lettuce in the cooler for the most part, and just make sure we have enough stocked so it looks abundant. But we try to keep things cool, so I think it's important that people can see it. But that's normally something. If we take a bag, we're not going to sell it. It's just kind of for display.
It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this, Drew, working with you on this presentation.
Great.
And all the questions coming in from the people from all over the country. It's been interesting.
Yeah, and I agree. It's been great to learn from you, and I've learned as well from the chat box. So it's been a really enjoyable evening for me.
Okay, folks, we'll cut it off right there, 8:30. Thank you for joining us. Join us not next week, but 2 weeks from now for small grains, and adding that to your large grain crop and livestock farm. And then we've got weeks every week after that. We'll have one on pricing poultry the week after that, last week of February. And then Chris Blanchard from Rock Spring the first week of March, Tuesday of March. And then the second Tuesday of March, Ron Roseman, longtime PFI member, talking about adding livestock to a crop rotation with beginning farmer Nathan Anderson. Thanks for joining us, and all have a great night.